Well, I'm going to remove the clutch assembly. It looks pretty straightforward. I see a outside snap ring on the end of the spline shaft here. I'm going to remove that with my snap ring pliers. Okay, once you remove the snap ring, the inner clutch packs will come out as an assembly. Now I remove this washer and this whole clutch basket assembly with this gear should come out. Piece of cake. I'm going to put this washer back in there with the clutch packs for safekeeping. I'll take a look at those friction plates at a later time. Not sure if you can see it or not, but there's actually a little inspection hole right here in the case. It allows you to see one of the Kickstarter gears. And when I rotate the Kickstarter, you can actually see right there is almost a complete tooth missing. There's another big hunk of tooth missing. That one's half chewed off. There's another one half chewed off. It's obvious what the problem is with the kickstarting on this thing. And I gotta find out why that got chewed up like that. But that's why it's not working. I'm gonna try this video through this here and see if that helps see it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. There's your problem right there. Look at that. Right here where my finger is. Case is cracked. Case, there's a crack, starts right there, goes all the way around here. That looks like that's right where this bearing gets supported. Now, that's just wonderful. Well, I'm going to continue with disassembly. From what I've read online, a lot of people have had trouble getting this spring, this Kickstarter spring, properly installed when they're putting this back together. So I want to take special note as to where this is located. I've even seen some people online who claim that the service manual, if you had one, actually shows the position incorrectly. So what I've got here is I've got this protrusion here in the casting that the hook, the spring actually hooks onto. So if I pull this out past that, I can actually rotate that. Actually, the spring tension allows that to rotate free. So I start to get tension right about here, and then it has to be pulled up and put back into that position when I'm putting this back together. Now I want to see if this sleeve right here, looks like this collar will come off. Looks like it's a spacer. Yeah, that's just a spacer, and that's got a groove right here. And the way that spring is locked onto that, so that spacer is at about 10 o'clock right now. I mean, that groove in the spacer is at about 10 o'clock. And then you can see the spring actually sits in a hole on the shaft of the Kickstarter right there. So that comes off like that. Now I wonder why this is so sloppy. But maybe this is actually just supported by the outer case. In other words, here's the outer case, and it's probably when it goes through this part right here, this is what supports it and keeps it from moving around. Alright, next I want to remove this spring here. This is on the end of the rod that's attached to the gear shift lever on the other side. So the gear shift lever basically just passes through the whole engine to come out this side to activate this lever and this whole ratcheting mechanism here, which basically is what controls shifting through the gears. So this should just pull off. a little bit of tension on there, but otherwise it pulls off. So the bottom of this spring goes underneath this pin. Top of this spring sits on top of this flat metal deal right here. Oh yeah, and that's under quite a bit of tension, so that'll be fun getting that back on. Now there's a tiny spring right here. I'm going to remove that now because I don't want it to fall off and go flying somewhere later and have no idea where it went. Now at this point, I think if I took the gear shift lever off the other side, that this mechanism right here, this lever assembly, would come right out with the whole shaft, except for the fact that this part of it right here is actually behind this segment-shaped metal plate. And that looks like it's only held on with one screw. But what I'm not sure about is whether or not there's a definite alignment to the way that has to go on there. Maybe there's a pin on the back of this that locks into a certain spot, but I'm not sure. Well, looks like with this spring removed, the small spring I took out of here removed, I could slide this back, and it looks like this will just clear that opening, this little cutout in the plate. So I am wondering whether or not I should try and, yeah, that looks like that'll come right out. So I want to take the gear shift lever off the other side. Took the bolt out, but this is on there pretty tight, so I'm just going to use my small gear puller to pull that off. I'm going to pop this clamp and this breather hose off of here just because it's in my way. Now the gear shift mechanism should slide right out. So again, I've got to push it up all the way to clear this, make sure this is slid back. When I go to reinstall it, I gotta make sure that this goes over this pin. It's really only the way it's gonna go back in, but now it gets stuck right here. That's probably just some grime on the shaft. I should probably clean that shaft before I try and pull it through the seal. What I'm talking about is clean this area here before I try and pull it through that oil seal. One last thing before I quit tonight. I did get the shift lever out. It did come out. You got to give it a little bit of a tap after you clean it up to get it to go through that oil seal and clear everything. But that comes right out. And then once you get that out, there's really an unobstructed view of this port right here. And I can actually see something laying in the bottom of the crankcase there. I'm going to see if I can fish it out. But it looks like a good sized hunk of metal. It might be a complete tooth off of one of the gears. Oh, I had a pretty good look at it before it fell inside the case that way. I had cut it out to here and then I accidentally flipped it and fell in that way. Clearly an entire tooth off a gear. And here's more metal chunks sitting right here in the foreground. So you got metal gear pieces just flying around in there, and you can imagine what that could do to the engine when it was running. So needless to say, the case is going to have to obviously be split, everything cleaned out, and everything inspected closely. Now I'm going to remove the oil pump, and I'm going to remove that because I want to make sure there aren't any hunks of metal, little pieces of metal stuck in there from the teeth and ground up teeth parts that ended up inside the motor or crankcase when all this catastrophe struck. Now I removed these two bolts, but before removing the oil pump, I wanted to check and see if there was a timing relationship regarding the way the pump is engaged to this gear, because a lot of times these have to be timed properly, otherwise you might have a situation where it'll blow oil after you put it back together. I don't know whether or not these little Honda motors are like that, but just to be on the safe side, I put the crankshaft in the position for top dead center, and sure enough, right at that very timing mark on the other side where the T is for top dead center, that's when these two holes in this gear line up perfectly, allowing you to get access to those two big screw heads. So I do believe that that is a critical timing relationship. So I'm going to make sure I do that when I put it back together. So now I've removed that cover. Now this gear can slide right off. and now it looks like you remove these two screws to take the rest of this pump assembly off. Wow, these screws they appear to be super tight. Either that or I'm missing something here as far as how these come out, because I even tried doing an impact driver and they don't want to come out. In fact, the bit actually twisted in the head here rather than turn the screw. So I'm going to hold off on taking that off until I split the case and see what's on the back side of this. I'm wondering if it seems kind of crazy, but maybe there are nuts on the inside that need to be removed to take this off. So for right now, I'm going to stop trying to take this housing of the oil pump off, and I'm going to shift gears, so to speak. I'm going to go ahead and try and take this flywheel off. And again, there would be a special tool that would engage these two holes. It'd be a half circle with a handle on it with two pins that would engage these holes, that would allow you to hold this steady as you remove that nut. I'm going to see whether or not I can do it with a strap wrench. And then the only other thing I've got to figure out is whether or not that's a left hand or a right hand thread. Alright, there's an arrow right here that indicates that this is a counterclockwise rotation of this assembly, which would tend to indicate to me that this would be a normal thread, or a lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So I think it's just a matter of making sure that I can hold this steady and put enough. Okay, there's an arrow right here that indicates the rotation on this is counterclockwise, which would indicate this should be a regular thread. So it should be lefty-loosey on this one. I tried putting a regular ratchet on there, and the problem is my strap wrench slips a little bit as I'm trying to loosen it, and that nut is really tight. So what I did was I put an adapter on here so I can use my impact half-inch impact wrench on this, and I'm just going to give it a quick zip and see if I can't break it free. Piece of cake. Spins right off. Apparently that's a press fit, so I'll have to put a puller on it. Well, that's on there pretty tight, and none of the pullers I have will get on here. I don't have a puller that's narrow enough to reach down into between here and the case and grab on there. So the problem is I can grab on one side, but I can't grab the other side. So I'm going to need to get a smaller puller. For right now, I'm going to be content with just leaving this be, and I'm going to pull the crankshaft nut, which is right here, that holds this crankshaft gear on. Because if I can get this nut off and this gear off, I should be able to split the case this way without even having to mess with that flywheel for now. So I can get moving, because I want to get these gears out and take an inventory of the damage inside.